Broadcasting from Hollywood, California, it's Grant's Rants, Hollywood Talk.
The Real House husbands of Beverly Hills face a list of legal problems. And Megan Stecher calls in to talk about the National Enquirer's ridiculous 25 most hated TV stars. And I break down this year's Primetime Emmy nomination process. That and more with Megan O'Donnell. Let the ranting begin. I am joined by Megan O'Donnell, a producer and podcast host of Bravo Happy Hour podcast. She's calling into the rants from New York City. Welcome to the show.
Hey, I can't believe I'm here.
Yes, well, I had the pleasure of being on your podcast recently, so now it's your turn to be on mine.
Yeah, that was episode 51. It was really funny. You are just so smart.
Well, thank you. The episode came out recently, so it's still current, folks. If you want to give it a listen, check it out. So let's get into some things here first. There's maybe absolutely zero happening on screen this season on The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. A color pattern may be more entertaining, but there's a lot going on with the husbands of The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. I know most people are like, who cares about the husbands? But they're all kind of trapped in some legal drama that's interesting. And what's interesting is that none of this is allowed to be played out on the show. Fans have really harassed Andy Cohen to mention these lawsuits and legal battles in the reunion, and he said he'll mention it all, in the words of Bethany. And so I'm glad, because I don't know what else they're going to talk about.
I mean, I think at this point they're doing a disservice to viewers, because we want to actually see what's happening in these people's lives. And, you know, it's also, they think that they're pulling a fast one over viewers, where it's like, no, Dorit is in the news every single day for like another like $170,000 tax lien. Like, how is that not being addressed on the show? And then you see her buying PK $800 wig to look like Karl Lagerfeld. It's like, yeah, things aren't adding up, and they need to be addressed. Let's not forget when they went away at the beginning part of the season. I forgot which island they went to.
Bahamar. Yeah, that one. Yeah,
whatever that means.
The new latest and greatest uncharted island. Yeah. You know, she was harassed by someone on the beach, and that was all on Instagram. And she was wearing the same bikini, Beverly Beach, that she was in when they shot. So like, they're really hiding all this stuff. And I know listeners will be saying, well, you know, Grant, I mean, it's legal. They can't really get into it. Erica did talk about this on Watch What Happens Live. It's private information, but they've referred to lawsuits in the past. They didn't have to get into the legalities of it all. I'm not looking to see, Mauricio put his hand on a Bible and testify in court. But I mean, like you said, Megan, I mean, this is happening. This is part of their life, all their lives, really. We'll get into it. I mean, this is what's really going down. This has to be adding stress and strain and a storyline to each of these women's lives in their own way. You'd think they'd all be able to bond over, like, the First Wives Club of alleged criminal husbands.
Right?
I'm kidding. They're not criminals. Relax.
Allegedly. But I think even at this point, like, Dorit doesn't have a storyline. Like, she has nothing going on. Actually, none of them actually do, now that I'm thinking about it, especially the Beverly Hills girls. So it's like, why aren't we talking about these kinds of things? I think, play a huge role in your family life, like in every kind of facet of your life. Well, give us more.
Yeah, well, here's what's happening. So there's a lot going on. Tom Girardi, Lay's Chips Eater PK, and Mauricio are all facing something that's happening legally. The Blast obtained court documents regarding Mauricio. A man is suing him and the agency. And also, they're after performers, producers, directors, and writers, and any other persons associated with Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. They want information. It goes back to season 7. It was aired around January, February 2017. I'll fill in the blanks for you. It was the Great Gatsby party, that themed party that they had. Eden Sassoon was there. Vanderpump was there. I don't know if anyone remembers that. But Mauricio allegedly has neglected to mention that he had partnered with the buyer of that house to purchase the property, and apparently he did not disclose side offers that were higher. This is all alleged, of course, and he's accused of breaching fiduciary duties. Who knows what the truth is, but that's what's happening. What do you think, Megan?
I don't know. I'm torn because I genuinely think like Mauricio is a good man. Like I think he's a great father. I think he's a great husband. So I have this like idea of him in my head. So when I was reading about this, like I think back in like August, this initial thing kind of started to break. I was thinking, I'm like, I don't think it's real. How could that be true? How could that be true? But then it's also like his business grew so exponentially, so quickly. Mm-hmm. So like he probably has a ton of people even working for him that could be so shady. Like it might not be Mauricio himself, but like he could have, you know, one of his goons at the agency, you know, plotting and doing this too. So he kind of keeps his hands a little clean. But I don't know. Part of me thinks it might not be true, but also who knows?
It's very easy, I think, to track down. I mean, it's all paperwork. You know, there's no like smoking gun here as far as like physical evidence other than paperwork. I mean, let's look at the higher offers. Let's look at the timeline of these events. I mean, anything that was signed, I think it's pretty easy to figure this out. The ladies, the Real Housewives, and production, they're involved because the man suing Mauricio thinks that they have more information on the use of his property. I doubt Dorit Kemsley. Yeah, I doubt Dorit Kemsley has any information on that house. She probably doesn't even know the address.
Well, you know, Dorit is going to be the next to reach a Jijiche. Like, she has no idea what she's been signing probably for the past, 10 years that she's been with PK. And, this is all going to crumble down for her. But I don't know. I kind of am holding strong for Mauricio. And, I don't really like Kyle. I actually find her quite annoying, especially this specific season. But I don't know. I feel like he's innocent, but who knows?
Kyle's whole life is traveling and parties, and she had a line in this week's episode. She's like, as soon as I come back from this trip, I have to get ready for the next party. I have no time in between. I'm like, that's your whole existence on the earth.
I mean, it's pretty incredible. That party did seem like so much fun, and 500 people, that's a wedding.
Yeah, and I think Paris Hilton was there, and I don't know why they didn't. There were a lot of celebrities that were at that party that didn't make the episode, so that would have been more interesting to see than Kyle trying to walk through grass and heels. But, this, again, I'm starting to take a lot of blame away from the ladies. I mean, it's really a production problem. I don't know who's producing this show as far as story goes. There must be a ton of limitations because they're not doing anything. Mm-hmm. Well, there are a few other things I want to discuss as far as these legalities go. PK, he allegedly owes a $1.2 million loan. He's ordered to reveal his finances in June, and apparently he only paid off the interest of this loan. And he did settle that. It was thrown out earlier this year. Some good news: a $75,000 gambling debt. It was thrown out on a technicality, so I don't know what that means. But some people just always come up smelling like roses.
I mean, I think he is shady. There is something up with him, and even with Dorit, they went on, $1 million listing to sell that house. They don't even own the house.
They don't own that house.
They don't own the house.
I've been saying this for years. That's at least a rented house.
Yes. God. And also, when you're going to have 2 kids, definitely get a house that's mainly vertical.
Yeah. As many stairs as possible. Yeah.
Marble steps is perfect for 2 kids learning how to walk.
Last, we don't talk about her a lot, but Erica Jane, her husband, and his firm are being sued by a loan company. They're going after him for $15 million. They filed to secure his assets, basically, and Tom feels that it was only there to defame him. It's really gotten ugly, though. This loan company said that he is actually actively soliciting more than $30 million in additional loans, and they accused him of funneling millions through loans. Really messy, ugly. Again, this is all I guess I have to say alleged, but I don't know this is just what I'm reading. But that's a lot of money to be on tap for. And I don't know why this loan company is really out to kind of defame him. And they're really kind of being petty.
Well, I think they kind of mentioned that they were how dare you owe us $15 million? And then we see your wife being like, yeah, I flew my 18-person stylist glam squad to Hong Kong first class. It's like, what? Like,
yeah.
That's like at least like $10,000 per person you're bringing, for hotels, whatever, so it's like if the wife of this like guy who gave them the loan like is watching Housewives, she's like, honey, doesn't he owe you $15 million? Why is Erica Jane like touring the country and like now is like a pop star? So I think it could be a little bit of that where it's like, okay, you can't just live this life when you're literally begging for $15 million.
Yeah. A little less serious, the last house husband, Teddy, who I can't stand, the two of them, he's accused of fraud on Yelp for his security business, and add him to the list. So there's a lot going on in Beverly Hills. None of it is on this season.
He's taking the Mauricio Kyle route where now Teddy is wearing like Skyline security hats and like that big tour bus with like the Skyline logo. It's like, okay, we get it. It's free exposure. But then, yeah, if anyone goes to Yelp to try to hire your business, it's like, 3 out of 5 stars for security business. I feel like that's not good.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you were representing Kyle and she has like one of the most notorious heists on her property.
Right?
Whatever. Changing cities, I want to just talk about real quickly. Real Housewives of New Jersey. Teresa's oldest daughter, Gia, attended prom with Frankie, Dolores' son. She's 18, he's 20. And I don't know why I never thought that they would be like a pairing. It's kind of unexpected, but it also makes sense. What did you think of these pictures?
I thought they looked absolutely beautiful. Gia is such a beautiful young woman, and Frank is really hot. I thought he was hotter when he was younger, which like maybe that's creepy. Now he's like very meathead where I'm like, that's a little too much for me. But I think it's great that they're dating. I just hope that Gia doesn't go to college with a boyfriend from home. I kind of hate when girls do that where it's like, no, like go to Rutgers, like meet boys, like have fun. But then on the other hand, it's like she is the daughter of two of the biggest housewives, obviously, who were then imprisoned, and the father's going through this massive, court case. So it's probably not the easiest thing in the world for her to date or to find guys she trusts. So to be with Frank Jr., who, understands this world and has known her probably since she was a little kid, I think it's sweet. And it's like The Sopranos. It reminds me of like Meadow and Jackie Jr., if anybody's a Sopranos fan listening, where it's like two young Jersey kids, like whose parents are best friends.
Well, earlier this week, I posted an Instagram story of the National Enquirer, and I was like, oh, Joy Behar made it for the 25 most hated TV stars. And I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. But I kind of forgot about it. And then I saw it again the next day, and I spent the $5. I've never purchased the National Enquirer. I am not an everyday reader of it by any means. I know my grandmother, Granny June, enjoys it every once in a while for a good laugh. So I said, you know what, like this actually might make for a good segment on Grant's Rants. So I picked it up, and then I decided that I wanted to get the take of my other friend, Megan Stecher. Megan and I were on AfterBuzz TV together for a while. She's appeared on this podcast numerous times, and I thought it'd be a good opportunity to catch up with her. Let's take a listen. This is a highlight. I'm so excited to talk to my longtime friend, Megan Stecher. Thank you for calling in.
You're welcome. All the way from rural Pennsylvania.
Oh, I love hearing your voice. I really do. I mean, it's so great. And the fact that I had Fern on last week, and I got such a great response. And people were asking about you, and I was like, don't worry, we're all still friends. We're just in different places, and, getting the team back together and all that. And I was like, well, I'm going to see if Megan is interested in talking about something so ridiculous. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk about this very important article.
I'm so happy. It makes me feel like we're back in LA around the table.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's get into it. I mean, this is really ridiculous. The National Enquirer, it's titled TV's 25 Most Hated Stars, New Twisted Secrets Exposed. I love the dramatics of the National Enquirer because it's such a joke, and I just love it so much. It makes me laugh. I open up the main article. It says, 25 stars we love to hate. Well, that's perfect for the rants.
On brand, especially because more than one person from The View was included.
Yes, 3. Oh, so here it says, bullies, braggarts, beaters, and cheaters exposed at last. I love just the real, it's such a rag, but I love it. So first thing, speaking of The View, that the first person that stuck out to me, crackpot comic, Rosie O'Donnell. The thing that gets me more than anything are the adjectives, just the descriptors, the dramatics. It opens up by saying the razor-tongued former stand-up comic was deemed too volatile for the female cage match on The View.
I mean, cage match does accurately describe The View to me.
Oh my God, I love it. I've called The View everything, and I've never called it a cage match, and to me this is like perfect. I love that.
But what stood out to me about the Rosie blurb was that they were saying that the poor executive producer, Bill Getty, had to take a leave of absence.
Yes.
And I mean, if you're I just want to say to anyone not involved in the industry, if you're an executive producer of a network show, like, you really are a tough person. You've been through some things and you've seen a lot, and you are probably excellent at your job. And if someone caused you to need a mental break from work, I gotta say, wow.
Well, I can only imagine the PTSD that comes with working on The View. But yeah, I mean, like you said, the executive producer is in charge. He runs the ship. So for that tells me that I know Rosie's a special kind of crazy, but, you know, he lost control of the show. So, you know, it's easy to do with her, but I'm not giving him any credit is what I'm saying. I don't like him. Who else on this stuck out to you?
You know, Kris Jenner for me, I'm not surprised because I think people love to hate her. I think people think she's a great mom and she's an amazing businesswoman, but I think people do love to hate her and think she's kind of maybe on the little more devilish side of getting behind some storylines and making things happen for her family.
Well, the National Enquirer, they play into this. They say conniving Kris has used their ex-spouses and boyfriends to advance the show's storylines, but is even worse behind the scenes. I love that every sentence in this article ends with an exclamation mark. It kind of loses its power after, like, sentence 4.
It's kind of like when I text everyone. Everything ends in an exclamation point.
Well, Kim made it on this list. A very old picture of Kim, National Enquirer, I will say. You know, this is what the lip liner version of Kim. So, you know, they were very shady in how they worded this. They said, after an unauthorized sex video made her famous, Kim's now worth $350 million. But she doesn't sing or dance. She spends.
I feel like this was a little off base. This was like outdated information. Of course, we know Kim is famous from that video. And it's kind of like people are, I think, surprised at how Kim is really turning around her platform to do great things. And this is, I don't know, it's old information, not bringing anything new to the table. And I think she's really got a leg to stand on these days with all that she's doing, especially studying to become a lawyer. It's kind of amazing.
I agree. Like, this really is like real low ball, like, you know, just like the worst things I can think of. Like, speaking of old news, I want to point out Alec Baldwin made this list. And the one thing that I love almost more than anything else is that this show on Grant's Rants continues to mine from 2007. Truly the golden age. And in 2019, I'm still benefiting from everything that happened in 2007, which I think is ridiculous. But
it's amazing.
Here's what they said. He is also, meaning Alec Baldwin, he also earned Worst Father of the Year consideration in 2007 after leaving a vicious voicemail for daughter Ireland, then 11, in which he called the kid a rude, thoughtless little pig.
This is definitely old news to me. And Kate Gosselin from this list was old news to me because there's nothing new to report to bring to the table with her. So I'm like, oh, why are we including her? I think someone else could have made this list.
Yeah, I agree. They call her a monster mom. I mean, this whole list could have been published. In fact, I wonder if this is a recycled piece because, Katherine Heigl's on here, Scott Baio. I mean, like, who's talking about these people?
And Rush Limbaugh. Ugh. I mean, that's way before 2007 to me.
I agree. Another trash talker, they call her, Joy Behar, made the list. Another View host. Also, Meghan McCain was on here. But for The View with Joy, they say that she now turns stomachs with her yapping on The View. And they always have to age shame, too. The 76-year-old sparked a war with co-host Meghan McCain after demanding she stop talking about her late dad, Senator John McCain. Then, in all caps, Joy insulted Vice President Mike Pence's faith, comparing his beliefs to having a mental illness. She also was exposed as a hopeless hypocrite when photos of her in blackface from the 70s were revealed in February. I don't even remember that.
I don't either. I'm surprised I didn't come across that.
Yeah, that seems odd. In fact, I know that she would goof on her tan. I'm not defending her, but I'm wondering if someone's just taking something a little too far because I don't remember hearing anything. And blackface is something that people don't fool around with. I mean, that will tank people's career, Megyn Kelly. So
exactly. I was just going to say Megyn Kelly. Oh my goodness.
Another resident of the list.
I want to say I do think she deserved a spot on this list because it's a fresher incident, and what a spectacular flop. I mean, to go from the Princess of Fox and kind of parlay between Fox and NBC that book and do so much press for her book, and then make this big splash at Today by getting her own show, which I want to give you so much credit for saying it was way off base that she was doing a morning talk show, that's not her brand. And wow, did that go downhill fast. Yeah, crash and burn. You know who else made this list? Of course, Real Housewives, Georgia Leach, Nene Leakes. They say that, and I really want to talk about this. They said the rowdy Real Housewives of Atlanta star got into a nasty punch-out with pregnant castmate Portia Williams and a producer during a recent reunion show. Well, this is inaccurate. Anyone that watches the show knows that this happened in her own house, and when they were trying to go into her closet, and I don't remember there ever being a punch thrown to Portia, but none of this happened at the reunion. So I love that this list isn't even accurate. Are they crossing two different incidences where when she did have a fight, Portia did have a fight on set during a reunion, but it wasn't recent?
The only thing that really got physical that I can recall was her dragging Kenya Moore years ago.
Okay, yes, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, these details seem a little muddled.
Yeah, I mean,
Thank you, National Enquirer.
Yeah. And then another housewife, Teresa Giudice. I mean, I don't know if she's hated, but they just said that they're crediting her hate towards declaring her love for her husband after they were sentenced to prison on fraud charges. I mean, I don't know if that's grounds for hate, but
I feel like they're a little off base there. As much as Joe has put her through, I think she's probably earned her time to not be married to Joe and move on.
Yeah, I agree. And the last one I want to point out, fan favorite, lover of the Grants Rants, Lindsay Lohan, listed as a Disney downer. And the reason for hating Lindsay, they say, the former Disney kids' January 2007 admittance into rehab marked the first of 6 court-ordered rehab stints in a 6-year span. She's been busted for a DUI and cocaine possession. Okay, first of all, this is extremely poorly worded. I can't make sense of this. Heads or tails. And they're, again, referencing 2007 and a DUI she got over 10 years ago.
And also, I don't think why would that make her most hated? I think it makes her, an interesting person to watch.
I agree.
You're rooting for her. You're astonished at the downfalls. You're excited when she's kind of throws herself back onto the scene in some way. So I don't know that this is the proper list for her, but we love Lindsay.
Yeah, I mean, it makes for a good picture. I mean, that's it.
She looks great in this picture, honestly. I think everyone else got kind of a poor choice. She looks great.
Yeah, she does. Are there any honorable mentions or anyone else you wanted to point out?
You know, I think Jussie Smollett right now, he made the list properly. I think he is one of the most hated right now.
Yeah, you could
TV.
say
That's really just kind of the most scandalous thing that I could think of in 2019. So
yeah, I mean, he's really like untouchable as far as casting. Like, who's gonna want to work with him right now? Same thing with Lori Loughlin for the moment. But yeah, no, it makes sense to have him on here.
Yeah,
so.
And Matt Lauer as well for me. Like, wow. That just really disgusted me when that whole thing went down as well.
Yeah, Roseanne Barr, another good honorable mention, is someone who really is hated. But, in comparison to this big picture they have of Kate Gosselin, I mean, I don't know who sourced this and put this together in the order they did, but, it's an interesting read. And if you want to read more and you're interested in spending $5, you can pick up this version of the National Enquirer on sale. Thank you, Megan, for ranting with me.
Thank you. It was great to talk with you.
And I hope that we can have you on later this summer and really catch up.
Let's do it.
Sounds good. Thanks again. And we're back with Megan O'Donnell here on Grant's Rants. And I want to get your take on this list. How ridiculous did you find this?
I mean, I thought it was absolutely gold. I totally agree. Like, why the fuck is Kate Gosselin on this list? It's 2019. Like, she's no longer in, like, the cultural zeitgeist. Like,
well,
no one...
do you know she's supposed to have a show, Kate Plus Date?
Oh, yeah, I did hear about that, which I think that's clever, but also are viewers
in title
really...
only.
Yeah, exactly. Like, are people really, like, tuning in to see her date? Like, I just feel like...
Absolutely not.
It's not really interesting.
I don't think anyone's interested in watching Kate go on Tinder dates.
Certainly not. I thought them having Teen Mom Farrah in here, like, where's Teen Mom Janelle Evans? Like,
Ugh.
like... She truly is one of the most hated people on TV. It's like, how is she not on this list? But Farrah, I mean, granted, Farrah is, her own breed of crazy. She's
earned that title, yeah.
Yeah.
I really do still enjoy this Alec Baldwin moment. And a fun fact, I actually had that voicemail as my ringtone senior year in high school. And I just thought it was so appropriate. It was like, pick up the phone, you thoughtless little pig. And
you rude, thoughtless little pig.
Let's just relive that moment.
Please.
So you better be ready Friday, the 20th, to meet with me. So I'm going to let you know just how I feel about what a rude little pig you really are. You are a rude, thoughtless little pig, okay?
It was truly so funny.
I love it. I just think that is just so ridiculous. And in fact, now the two of them both took to Instagram and posted a picture of them reading a book called If I Was a Pig. And they made jokes about the phone call. So they're cool. So,
oh my, it's like he's screaming at an 11-year-old little girl saying, you have no brains or decency. I'm going to come to New York for one day and one day only to straighten you out. Like, what? This is
we know he has a temper,
money.
But I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end.
Oh my God, you rude, thoughtless little pig.
Well, when we come back, we're going to take a quick break. And then there's a huge push for your consideration Emmy campaigns all around LA. And I want to talk about it. I actually looked into the whole Emmy submission process. And it's kind of interesting. I think you'll find it interesting as well. I'm going to talk more with Megan about her life in New York and other good stuff in a moment. Now this.
You're listening to Grant's Rants. Subscribe and spread the word. There are a lot more rants to come. Listen anytime on all major podcasting platforms. And now, back to the show.
And we're back talking with Megan O'Donnell out of New York. And if you're in LA, you haven't seen the sun in days. I'm still wearing winter sweaters. What's it like in New York? I'm actually about to check it out and head over there. What's it like right now weather-wise?
New York is absolutely beautiful right now. It's like high 70s, high 80s. so perfect. Granted, like as I'm saying this, I'm like knocking on wood, or else it's gonna like start to thunder in like 8 minutes.
Oh,
like
you're
things
lucky.
can change on a dime.
Yeah.
But it's been so nice. This weekend was so great. Oh, I feel like everybody has like left like their seasonal depression at the door. We're like back to being normal humans again.
Well, I can't wait to indulge myself and enjoy it because, I wait all year long to get to New York. So, meanwhile, here in LA, there are tons and tons of billboards all over the place. They've dominated Sunset and my neighborhood over here for your consideration, which is basically, these networks, television networks are sending in their entries for nominations for Emmys. So this is basically like, I guess people are kind of seeing like what sticks. So like, anything that has aired between June 1st, 2018 and May 31st, 2019 is eligible for nomination. And then it's going to go into a nomination round of voting. That goes from June 10th to June 24th. So that's all coming up. So everyone's really pushing this. And you can't walk out your front door without having something or an actor or a show being, pushed down your throat to be voted for. And, I'm not part of the Academy. And I think the majority of the people driving around these streets aren't either. So it's for a very select audience. In New York, is there anything like this? Are there FIC ads and campaigns anywhere?
Never. I don't think I've ever seen one.
It's such an LA thing.
Yeah. I feel like that stuff. I feel like the award shows definitely have more buzz out there than here. I guess because they're out there.
I can't imagine like them buying up space in Times Square to nominate like, Superstore or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like whatever. But nominations will be announced, the formal nominations, the 16th of July, and then everyone will vote through August, and then the telecast will be September 22nd on Fox. So in LA, Emmy season is definitely here, and with that comes a lot of FYC panels where people will sit down and talk about why this show is so great and why the critics should vote for it and what makes it, so eligible, and the money they spend on these packages. They're DVDs of sometimes they're select episodes, sometimes they're full seasons, and they're screeners is what they are. And the money they spend on the packaging, I mean, there's no expense spared to get an Emmy nom. And it's kind of crazy to see the money being poured into these every year. Do you have any experience with this?
A little bit. I used to work for a business management firm, and we basically took all the mail for people. So we would have these like, I can't talk about like who we worked for, but some pretty major musicians getting all of these like Emmy consideration boxes. And we'd be like, all right, well, I guess we're going to watch it and then send it to them. But other than that, I'm kind of like out of, yeah, right. We're like, okay, we all watch it and then ship a FedEx.
So out of last year's 7 drama series contenders, only 2 are eligible to be back on the ballot this year. And that's because of that nomination window within the last year they have to have aired. So now their Variety is reporting this. They're saying that Game of Thrones has one final time to win Emmys for their show. This Is Us, Better Call Saul, House of Cards, Pose, Bodyguards, they're all eligible for nominations. Like favorites like Westworld and The Crown, they're airing seasons too late to be considered. So, it's interesting to see like that definitely changes the playground or the battleground for what can win, because, some of these shows like Veep is one to watch. I mean, a lot of them, they snap up like almost everything. So it is a strategy. Like if, something like Westworld not being on the ballot, I mean, that helps out other networks because Westworld is another big winner. So it's all a game. I don't know how interested I am in playing it, but it's interesting nonetheless because everyone has to plan out their network schedules and the production to be able to kind of be competitive if and when they're nominated. It's a whole science, really.
Yeah, and it just does seem weird. Like when you were kind of going over like the eligibility window, I feel like they should standardize it. Like if your show comes out in 2018, like then that's the time frame where you could be nominated. And yeah, it does feel like, I don't really like Stranger Things, like science fiction, that whole thing is like not really it's not my interest. I feel like people are not going to be voting for Game of Thrones in its final seasons. I feel like after like the finale that everyone freaked out about. I feel like they can't.
I don't know. I mean, they win a
awards.
lot. I think they're very competitive, just even creatively on the creative Emmy side of things, just the BTS stuff. I mean, it's hard to compete. I mean, the budget they have is probably double than something like Russian Doll. You know, I mean, it's just insane. I'd like to see Surviving R. Kelly get nominated just because this piece, whether it's amazing produced, I don't know, whatever, it wasn't like anything crazy, the production value, but it has made a difference in society, and it had a very powerful story, and I don't know what more you would need to really deem something Emmy-worthy. So I'd like to see that get nominated at least.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think when you have a show that really sparks like a full cultural conversation, and also we're now seeing like him being brought to justice, like that's a really powerful story. And also ultimately, like these are the stories of the women that he abused, not just him. And I think seeing it from that lens, and, you know, I think it was like a 4-part series, you just feel for these women at the end of the day, where you kind of forget who the monster is at play. And you're like, all of these women just have such a similar story and have never been believed, or have never even been asked to tell their story. So I think it was a really powerful piece. And I definitely think they'll definitely get some sort of Emmy nom, I would hope, or at least an Emmy, period.
We'll see. The Emmys, again, will air September 22nd and will play out all summer long. So, yes.
So we will not be done talking about
this. No, that's true. But let's talk about a few other things. Let's talk about your podcast, Bravo Happy Hour. Again, I was a recent guest, episode 51. So if you want to hear that, please do. But, you know, starting a podcast, I think back to even now, my show is almost 4 years old. You know, it's kind of a big undertaking to take on, because once you start, you really can't stop. I mean, what got you to start creating a podcast? What got you into it?
Well, I've always been like a huge radio lover, and I got into podcasts when I was in college, but I started when I was in my senior year of college. I started a podcast called I Know You Didn't Ask. That was like a whole pop culture show, but I was like, you know, in college and lazy and didn't want to do it. We'd be drinking the whole episode, and I wouldn't edit it. I just would post it, and like no one was listening. So then I stopped doing it after like 20 episodes. And then like a year later, I was like, all right, I'm getting more serious. So I tried to like redo the concept again. And then again, I was like being inconsistent, and, you know, I was having fun doing it, but, you know, I'd listen to my episodes and be like, oh, okay, I'll edit it tomorrow, whatever. If it goes up on Tuesday or Wednesday, who cares? So then I was like, okay, this needs to stop too. And then I really realized like focusing on Bravo for me is like my main interest. And then it was like finding an angle. So, you know, for me, I listen to Crappens, I listen to your show, I listen to so many shows that talk about Bravo, but I never really found one that was really like exclusively news driven, you know, where it's actually happening in real time.
This is true.
And then being able to, you know, eventually see like the full cycle of the story at like on the show. So now I'm actually getting to the point where it's like things that I was talking about with Michael Darby and Ashley, like those lawsuits, like that was on my first episode of my show. So now I'm finally seeing like a full life cycle of a story.
On the show, yeah.
So it's been really exciting, and yeah, I mean, it's so much work, and I have a full-time job, so doing like 2 episodes a week is.
I don't know how you do 2 episodes a week and have a full-time job. I mean, I would love to do more of this show. There's just not enough hours in the day.
Yeah, I'm like a machine. Like if I don't have like to-do lists, and like if I'm not like hyper focused, like it all goes to shit. But at least like I really enjoy doing this. You know, on my last show when I was doing it, it got to the point where I was kind of like resenting the topics, and I was like, this is so boring. Like this isn't fun. Like I'm not even interested. So why are other people going to listen? But now like people are listening, and I've made so many new friends, and I'm kind of building like this little community, because I think so many of the podcasters that I listen to, they're all LA based. So I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I guess I'll kind of try to make a small little New York family of like my friends who love the show, random people I meet. Like I met this waitress like at a restaurant downtown, and she heard me talking about Bravo, and she's like, are you talking Bravo? I was like, yeah. And then we just started talking, and she was cracking me up, and she's like, oh, I used to be the tour guide for the Real Housewives of New York bus tour.
Oh,
so
wow.
I'm like, here's my card. You're coming on the show. And she came on, and we just had a great time. And I'm like, wow, look, new friend. So it's been definitely awesome and a great experience.
So outside of podcasting, you mentioned that you're a coordinator, producer in New York. You're working for a video, or you're working with video and photo for a magazine. Is this digital?
Yeah, so it's all digital stuff. So it's New York Magazine. I came from Condé Nast, which is like Vanity Fair, GQ, like all like Vogue, those bigger brands. And then I just left about a month and a half ago. And so I started this new role at New York Magazine, and it's been really great. And if any of your listeners are like New Yorkers or just interested in like The Cut or Vulture, like we own those properties too. So being able to like make content for some of like the best brands, in my personal opinion, has been like so cool. And yeah, it's definitely
those are good. Those are good brands to work for, especially if they had podcasts. Yeah.
Well, exactly. That's like, I mean, I'm like, you know, eventually one day I would love to do something with Vulture with my own show, because they are constantly talking about podcasts and they have their own podcast. And so it's kind of fun that like something I'm personally interested in, like outside of work, is also like respected in my day job, you know? And I mean, you're like in a similar, like you do podcasts for a living too. So it's nice to probably work with people who like kind of understand, like, oh, I got to go home and record, you know?
Yep. Yeah. A 7-day-a-week job for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's great. I mean, to even, you know, work for a large brand like Condé Nast, and then to be able to move around. I mean, it sounds like you've definitely got your career like on lock, like you figured it out.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. I think like ultimately, like my main dream is to open up like my own little store. But like, you know, since I've lived in New York for so long at this point, I'm like, okay, I can never afford retail space for like another, like I need to save like $50,000, and that's just not happening. So I'm like, until then, you know, I'll do production stuff just because it's fun and I love entertainment. And then the podcast I just do is like a fun creative outlet. And if it goes somewhere, that's amazing. But if it doesn't, like I'm pretty happy with like my listenership and my numbers are growing. So I'm like, you know what? It's
awesome.
all just fun.
Yeah. Good for you. That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, I was like a crazy person, like staring at the numbers aggressively. And then I kind of had to like detach and be like, are you doing this for the numbers, or are you doing this because you're having fun?
So how can we support you? How can we check out your podcast? Where can we find it?
Well, it's, I think, kind of everywhere. Obviously, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, all the above. It's out every Monday and Thursday. Monday's episodes are usually a little heavier, about 40 minutes. And then Thursday's episodes are about 20 minutes. So it's kind of like a nice, fun, easy thing. Like I don't want to keep it too long because I don't know. Sometimes you listen to a show and you look down at your phone and you're like, has it been an hour and 48 minutes? Like I'm listening to the same exact thing. So I kind of try to keep it like short and sweet, and it's really fun, and the guests are really awesome. And some guests are regulars, so they come back, and you know, people get to like know and enjoy their opinions too. And obviously, you're going to be coming back as well.
Oh, great, nice. Yeah, please do check it out, guys. It's called Bravo Happy Hour Podcast. Is that the correct name?
That is it.
All right, cool. Well, thank you for coming on the Rants.
Yeah, of course.
All right. I will be back. I'm actually going to be taking a small vacation here, which is going to overlap over the next 2 weeks. Unfortunately, it's just like I'm coming back on a Sunday when I normally record. But the Rants will continue, and more good stuff to come. I love you for listening. And as always, I will be back with more Rants.
This has been Grant's Rants. Support the Rants on Patreon at patreon.com/Grant's Rants. Follow Grant on Twitter and Instagram at It's Grant's Rants. Cover art created by Howie Rone. Voiceover by Aw Yeah! Original theme music by Alexander Arntzen. The Grant Michael Collection.